Welcome to our deep dive, everybody. We're going to be looking at AI, and more specifically, the energy demands of artificial intelligence. And get this, AI, especially those large language models like ChatGPT, they need an unbelievable amount of energy to run. We're talking like entire cities worth of power for just one data center. It's crazy. And the crazy part is the companies that are pushing hardest for AI, those big tech companies, those are also the ones that are pledging to be carbon neutral. So how are they going to do both? How are they going to push AI and stay carbon neutral? That's what we're going to be looking at today.
Yeah, it's interesting because the answer that a lot of these companies are coming to seems to be nuclear power, but not the, big old risky power plants that we've seen in the past. We're talking about smaller and potentially safer options.
Okay, so we have this huge demand for AI. I mean, it seems like everyone's using it, but it uses a ton of energy. So how bad is it really?
Well, it's pretty bad. AI's energy demand is expected to grow something like 15 to 20% every year until 2030, which is a massive increase. And you think about it, even just one query to ChatGPT can use 10 times the electricity of just a simple Google search. And to take that even further, AI data centers could use up to 12% of all the power in the US by 2028.
Wow. So we're talking some serious numbers here.
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense though, right? These AI models are incredibly complex. But doesn't that contradict all our efforts to get away from fossil fuels?
It definitely does. In fact, you know what? AI's energy hunger has actually made people interested in gas and even coal again as power sources, which, isn't exactly what we were hoping for. It's kind of ironic, really.
So it sounds like AI is giving us a real energy dilemma. But what about efficiency? I was reading about this new Chinese AI model. It's called DeepSeek, and it's supposed to be really energy efficient. Does that change anything?
Yeah, DeepSeek is a promising development. However, we got to remember everyone's going to try to copy it. So while individual models might become more efficient overall, the demand for AI is probably going to keep growing, which ultimately means even more energy use in the long run.
That's a good point. It's like taking one step forward and then half a step back. But it does sound like some big tech companies are at least trying to put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah.
When it comes to clean energy, especially nuclear power. What's happening there?
Well, it's pretty surprising. There's a big resurgence of interest in nuclear power. And big tech is a big reason why Amazon, for example, is investing $500 million in small nuclear reactor projects. Microsoft has deals for both green hydrogen and even nuclear fusion. And then Google's looking into geothermal energy to power its data centers.
Hold on, nuclear power. Isn't that kind of risky? I thought we were all about solar and wind and those types of technologies.
Yeah, traditional nuclear power has its issues for sure, especially those big plants. Concerns about accidents and waste disposal. But what we're seeing now is a focus on smaller, more modular designs. These are potentially safer and easier to build and deploy.
So what are these small modular reactors, these SMRs?
Imagine a nuclear reactor built off-site and then transported like a giant Lego set. That's the idea. They're designed to be faster and cheaper to build than traditional plants, and possibly safer because of that modular design. There's even the possibility of putting these SMRs right next to data centers, and that would eliminate the need for those big power grids.
So instead of massive power plants, we could have these smaller, more localized nuclear reactors powering certain areas or even individual data centers. That's a pretty big change.
Yeah, it is. And there's some companies like Last Energy. They're already working on bringing reactors right to the data centers, and they're really focusing on safety. They enclose all the radioactive material in a super thick steel containment structure.
Okay, that does sound safer than those giant cooling towers we usually see. But what about nuclear waste? Are there still concerns about that, even with the smaller reactors?
Well, no technology is 100% risk-free, but these new designs are meant to create less waste and have better containment. So the overall risk is lower, and then you have to weigh that against the potential benefits. In terms of clean and reliable energy, it's a significant potential benefit.
So it sounds like there's a trade-off here for sure. But let's zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture. We're talking about a major investment in nuclear power at a time when it seems like the U.S. is shifting away from green energy. How does that add up?
Yeah, you've got a good point. There's a definite tension between this need for AI and all the energy that requires, and then the changing political landscape around green energy. Right now, the administration is supporting both oil and gas development and the U.S. becoming like the AI capital of the world. So yeah, it's a mixed message.
It really does seem like we're trying to have our cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
But is there a concern that without support for green energy, we might end up relying on fossil fuels to power all this AI development?
Absolutely. That's a real danger. And that would totally defeat the purpose of finding sustainable solutions. It'd be like taking 2 steps forward with clean energy only to get pulled back by all that readily available fossil fuel. definitely a complex situation.
It sounds like it. But hey, let's not get too pessimistic. We talked about SMRs, but what about some of those other cutting-edge technologies? Are there any other options besides these smaller nuclear reactors?
There are. We're seeing some really exciting developments in areas like fusion and fission. And there's renewed interest in those more familiar green technologies like geothermal and concentrated solar.
Fusion. Now, isn't that the holy grail of energy? The same process that powers the sun. I thought that was still decades away.
It's a huge goal. But some companies are making some pretty impressive progress. Helion is a company that's aiming to achieve commercially viable fusion power. And they already have some big names backing them, like Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI.
Wow, that's a big vote of confidence. What about Microsoft's deal to buy fusion power from Helion by 2028? Is that even realistic?
Well, it's definitely ambitious. Helion is confident, but achieving fusion power on a commercial scale is a huge scientific and engineering challenge. It'll be interesting to see if they can actually deliver.
So it's a gamble, but it could be game-changing. What about fission? That's splitting atoms instead of fusing them, right? Is anyone working on that?
Yeah, fission is making a comeback. Oklo, for instance, is betting big on it.
Yeah.
They're planning to deploy thousands of these microreactors. They'll be housed in these really sleek, futuristic powerhouses.
Right.
And their goal is to have their first microreactor online by 2027 at the Idaho National Laboratory.
2027. That's coming up fast. It sounds like there's a real fission frenzy going on. But are we putting all our eggs in the nuclear basket here? What about those other green technologies we were talking about earlier, like solar wind and geothermal? Are those getting overshadowed by all this nuclear stuff?
Not at all. Nuclear is getting a lot of attention, but other renewable energy sources are also getting a second look, especially now that we're starting to see the limitations of relying only on solar and wind power.
Right. The sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow.
Right.
We need some reliable alternatives. And that's where geothermal energy comes in, right? Tapping into the Earth's heat.
Exactly. Geothermal is becoming more viable thanks to new drilling techniques. And you know what? Companies like Fervo Energy are working with Google on pilot projects to power data centers with geothermal energy.
That's incredible. Using the Earth's heat to power AI. But isn't there a risk that will deplete that heat source?
It's a good question and something that needs to be carefully managed. We need to understand the potential impacts and make sure we're using it sustainably.
So geothermal has potential, but we have to be careful. What about solar? I know it's been around for a while, but are there any new developments there?
Absolutely. Companies like Exawatt are doing some really innovative things with concentrated solar power. And they've got these advanced thermal batteries that can store energy much more affordably. So that makes solar a much more reliable option even when the sun's not shining.
So it sounds like it's not about choosing one solution. It's about finding the right mix of technologies to meet those growing energy needs in a sustainable way. It's a big challenge, but it sounds like there are a lot of promising options out there.
You know, before we move on, there's something else we should touch on. AI itself might actually be the key to better energy efficiency.
Oh, right. It's like AI is this big energy hog, but it could also be the answer to our energy problems.
Yeah, exactly. Like, even though AI needs all this computing power, it can actually optimize energy use in a lot of different ways. Imagine using AI to, like, manage power grids better, or even to predict and stop energy waste in buildings. We could even use it to design computer hardware that uses less energy.
So AI could help us use energy more efficiently, do more with less. Are there any real examples of this happening, like AI being used to make things more energy efficient?
There are Google, for example. They're already using AI to manage the cooling systems in their data centers, and they've actually reduced their energy use quite a bit. And companies like IBM, they're developing these AI platforms that can look at how buildings use energy and suggest ways to reduce waste.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So instead of just finding new energy sources, we can also use AI to make our current systems better. It's like AI is getting eco-conscious.
Yeah, in a way, we're basically teaching AI to find solutions that reduce waste and are more sustainable. And we're doing that by giving it data about energy consumption and environmental impact.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot today, the increasing energy demands of AI and all the different tech solutions that are out there. But now I think we got to ask the big question. Is this whole AI revolution good or bad for the planet?
That's the big question, isn't it? And there isn't a simple answer. It really depends on what we decide to do. If we're not careful, AI could make our environmental problems even worse. You know, by increasing energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions, especially if we're using fossil fuels to power it all.
So if we just keep building data centers and using coal to power them, we're basically just trading one problem for another.
Exactly. But here's the thing, AI could actually help us solve those problems too. By making energy use more efficient, helping us manage resources better, and speeding up the development of clean energy, AI could actually be a big part of making a more sustainable future.
So it's not a guarantee that AI will destroy the planet. There's still hope.
Absolutely. There's definitely help. It all depends on whether we make sustainability a priority. If we invest in the right infrastructure and use AI to make our energy use smarter, we can reduce the risks and really take advantage of the good things AI can bring.
Sounds like we're at a crossroads. The choices we make now will decide whether AI helps the planet or hurts it. That's a lot of pressure.
It is. It's a good reminder that technology is a tool. It can be used for good or for bad. Ultimately, it's up to us how we decide to use it.
You know, it's easy to focus on the energy stuff, but AI's impact is much bigger than that. It's already changing so many parts of our lives.
Yeah.
The way we work, communicate, learn, and create has huge potential, but it could also disrupt a lot of things.
Absolutely. The rise of AI is a huge deal for humanity. We need to be excited about it, but also cautious. We got to be aware of the risks.
And we need to keep talking about it. These are complicated issues, and we have to understand the potential consequences of our choices. The future really depends on the decisions we make today.
Totally. And as we deal with all these challenges and opportunities, one thing's for sure, the story of AI and how it affects the world is just getting started. We're only at the beginning. It's up to us to decide what happens next.
That's a great point. We're not just sitting back and watching this happen. We can actually shape how AI develops and what impact it has on the planet. Okay, so we're back for the last part of our AI deep dive. We've talked about AI's massive energy consumption and explored some possible solutions, like nuclear power and even AI-powered energy efficiency. But before we go, I want to talk about something we haven't really touched on, the economics of it all. Because let's be honest, if clean energy is too expensive, no one's going to use it. They'll just stick with fossil fuels.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
If we want to move to a sustainable energy future, clean energy has to be affordable. That's where those innovations we talked about are so important. As these technologies get better and more people start using them, the cost should go down. And that'll make it a better option for everyone.
So it's not enough to just invent these cool new technologies. We have to make them cheap enough that everyone can use them. What's the point of having fusion-powered everything if only billionaires can afford it?
Exactly. The goal is to make clean energy the obvious choice. Not just because it's good for the planet, but also because it makes sense financially, and we're already seeing some progress. You know, solar energy's gotten way cheaper in the last few years, and as battery tech improves, it'll get even more reliable.
That's good to hear. But even if we solve the clean energy problem, there's still a big question. What if AI's energy demands just keep growing like crazy? What if we just can't keep up even with all these new technologies?
That's a real possibility. You know, there's no guarantee we can keep providing the energy that AI needs. Especially with the way computing power keeps increasing, we might hit a wall, either because we run out of energy or because all that energy use just wrecks the environment.
So what do we do then? Do we just give up on AI? Or do we have to completely rethink how we use energy and resources?
We'll probably need to do a bit of both. You know, we might have to look at some even crazier energy solutions, like putting solar panels in space or finding completely new energy sources. We also might have to decide which AI applications are the most important and focus on those, like the ones that can help us solve big problems instead of just the ones that need a ton of computing power.
It sounds like we need to change how we think about energy and technology. It's not just about finding more energy. It's about using what we have more wisely and designing systems that are sustainable from the beginning.
Yeah, I think you're right. The future of AI and humanity really depends on finding that balance between technology and sustainability. It's tricky, but we have to figure it out if we want a future where everyone can thrive.
That's a powerful idea, and a great way to wrap up our deep dive into AI's energy demands. We've covered a lot today, from nuclear reactors to the big philosophical questions about technology. But one thing's for sure, this conversation needs to continue. The future of AI energy and the planet are all connected. The choices we make today will affect everyone for generations to come. So stay curious. Keep asking those tough questions, and let's all work together to build a future where AI is a force for good in the world. Until next time, happy deep diving.